There are legends in Hollywood, men carved from light stitched into the history of cinema forever untouchable. And then there is Tom Cruise, a man the world believes it already understands, the fearless daredevil who hangs from airplanes, the hero who outruns death, the superstar whose smile could light up an entire decade. But behind that smile lives a truth that very few have ever dared to look at. Before the fame, before the billion-dollar franchises, before the impossible missions that turned him into the last great movie star of our time, Tom Cruise was just a frightened boy hiding under the shadow of a man he called Father. A child who could not read, who moved from town to town like a ghost, who kept every dream locked inside his chest because the world kept telling him he was not enough. People see Tom Cruise on the screen and think courage came naturally to him. They have no idea that his life began with fear. Fear of failure, fear of humiliation, fear of a violent man who taught him in the cruelest ways that the world is not safe. And that boy, the one who struggled to understand words on a page, would one day become the highest paid actor alive. Not by luck, not by talent alone, but because he refused to let fear be the end of his story. This is the part Hollywood never shows you. The part where a quiet, broken kid transforms himself into a myth, where every jump, every stunt, every impossible leap is not just performance, but a desperate race to outrun the ghosts of his past. And the more you learn about him, the more one question starts to haunt you. How did Tom Cruise go from a boy who could barely read to a man the entire world cannot stop watching? To understand that, we have to return to the beginning, to the house where fear lived, to the father who shaped him, to the child who decided in silence that he would rise, no matter the cost. He was still young when the world began to feel too heavy for him. The fear, the constant moving, the humiliation of standing in front of a class unable to read the words everyone else understood. Tom Cruise did not grow up dreaming of Hollywood. He grew up dreaming of safety. And then, just when he was searching for something to hold on to, something powerful stepped into his life. Something that promised strength, clarity, purpose, and most of all, control. It was called Scientology. He first heard about it through people he trusted. They spoke of a system that could reshape your mind, a philosophy that could free you from fear, trauma, and limitation, a way to overcome the very obstacles that had haunted him since childhood. And for a young man who had spent his entire life feeling powerless, those promises sounded like salvation. When Tom walked through the doors of the Church of Scientology for the first time, he did not walk in as a future superstar. He walked in as a broken boy looking for a way to become whole. Inside those walls, he found teachers who looked at him not as a kid with dyslexia, but as a man with untapped potential. They trained him. They guided him. They gave him techniques that seemed to unlock something inside his mind. Tom began to read more fluently. He began to feel confident. He began to feel unstoppable. And the church saw something in him too. Not just a member, not just a student, but a future icon. Bit by bit, Scientology elevated him. They praised him. They protected him. They built a circle around him so tight that the outside world began to fade away. Tom Cruise became their brightest star, their most powerful symbol. And to him, the church became a source of loyalty deeper than blood. But every bond has a cost, and every rise carries a shadow. Because the deeper Tom stepped into Scientology, the more the world began to notice the invisible walls forming around his life. Walls that would one day collide with love, with family, with marriage, and with the woman who would break his heart in ways no stunt ever could. The next chapter in his life is one filled with beauty, myth, and quiet devastation. It begins with a woman named Nicole Kidman. Before the scandals, before the headlines, before the world began dissecting every move he made, there was a moment when Tom Cruise believed he had finally found peace. Her name was Nicole Kidman. She was young, brilliant, radiant, and untouched by the chaos of fame. Their chemistry began on the set of Days of Thunder, but it lit up like wildfire the moment the cameras stopped rolling. There was something effortless between them, something gentle and real in a world built on illusions. Tom fell first. Tom fell fast. And the whole world watched as the brightest star in Hollywood found his perfect match. They married in 1992, beautiful souls standing together at the very edge of their destiny. They adopted 2 children, Isabella and Connor, and for a few precious years, they lived the kind of life tabloids love to destroy: private, elegant, harmonious. When they walked a red carpet together, it felt like light bending toward light. Tom Cruise, the unstoppable force; Nicole Kidman, the quiet flame. Together, they were untouchable. But behind the photographs and magazine covers, there was a soft tension growing in the silence between them. Nicole was not raised inside the same belief system Tom was diving deeper into. The more committed Tom became to Scientology, the more distant the world around them seemed to grow. Nicole wanted simplicity. Tom wanted certainty. Scientology offered him that certainty, and it did not offer it to her. Rumors spread quietly in Hollywood. Stories whispered behind closed doors. People wondered if the church was pulling Tom closer while pushing Nicole away. No one could prove anything. But the distance between husband and wife began to feel like a canyon carved by 2 different worlds. And then, it happened. After 10 years of love, 10 years of battles, 10 years of trying to stay together, Nicole Kidman filed for divorce in 2001. The world gasped. Hollywood froze. No one understood how 2 people so perfect together could shatter so suddenly, so completely. Tom rarely spoke about it. Nicole cried when asked about it. And their children were left standing between 2 lives that no longer touched. It was the first wound the public truly saw on Tom Cruise. And it was the first time the world realized that behind the dazzling smile was a man losing the things that mattered most. But he still had one more fall to endure. And it would be louder, harsher, and far more public. Because before he could heal from Nicole, Tom Cruise would walk straight into the most chaotic chapter of his life. The year was 2005. By 2005, Tom Cruise had survived heartbreak, rebuilt his image, and remained one of the most powerful actors in Hollywood. He was admired, he was respected, he was untouchable. And then, in a single year, everything fractured. It began with something that looked innocent, something meant to be charming, a moment of joy that spiraled into one of the most infamous public meltdowns in television history. He was invited onto the Oprah Winfrey Show. He came to talk about his new film. He came to talk about his new love, Katie Holmes. He came with the biggest smile he had worn in years. But no one was ready for what happened next. As he spoke, the excitement in his voice climbed higher. His gestures grew bigger. He laughed. He stood. And then, in a moment that would be replayed around the world for decades, Tom Cruise jumped on Oprah's couch. It was not planned. It was not scripted. But it was captured by millions. And the world did not see passion. They saw chaos. They saw a man unraveling. They saw a superstar behaving in a way that felt strange, erratic, even frightening. Overnight, Tom Cruise went from beloved icon to late-night punchline. But the storm was only beginning. Days later, he appeared on NBC's Today Show, where he passionately criticized the use of antidepressants and called psychiatry a pseudoscience. The intensity in his voice, the sharpness in his tone, the fierce conviction behind his words, it shocked audiences across the country. Hollywood whispered that he had become an extremist. Critics said he had lost control. Journalists began writing about his deepening ties to Scientology with a tone sharper than ever before. And moviegoers, the very people who had adored him for 2 decades, suddenly turned away. In just a few months, Tom Cruise went from the golden boy of Hollywood to its most controversial figure. Studios grew nervous. Executives whispered behind closed doors. For the first time in years, the Tom Cruise brand felt fragile. It was not a scandal about money. It was not about crime. It was something harder to recover from. The public no longer understood him. And when the public stops understanding you, they stop trusting you. But the world did not yet know that Tom's next heartbreak would make 2005 look small. Because just when he thought he had found love again, just when he believed he had rebuilt his happiness, something far more devastating was waiting for him. Katie Holmes was about to do what no one in Hollywood expected. She was about to run. For a brief moment, it looked like Tom Cruise had found his way back to happiness. He had weathered the ridicule, the headlines, the media frenzy. And there she was, Katie Holmes, bright, sweet, hopeful, a woman who seemed to bring warmth into his life again. Their romance was a fairy tale written across magazine covers. The world called them Tomcat. They smiled in photographs. They welcomed their daughter Suri in 2006. And for a while, Tom looked like a man who had finally rebuilt his heart. But beneath the glamour, something quieter was happening. Something the public could not see. Something only Katie felt. Tom's world was intense. His schedule, his fame, his devotion to Scientology, all of it wrapped around their marriage like a tightening circle. Katie loved him, but she feared the environment their daughter would grow up in. She feared the influence of a belief system she did not fully trust, and she feared what would happen if she stayed silent. So, she made a decision that would shock the world. In 2012, without warning, without a hint of hesitation, Katie Holmes filed for divorce. But it was the way she did it that left Hollywood speechless. She planned everything in secret. She changed phone numbers. She found separate lawyers in 3 different states. She used disposable cell phones so no one could track her plans. She moved Suri away before the papers were even delivered. It was not a separation. It was an escape. When Tom received the news, he was on a film set working focused, unaware that his marriage had just ended. The moment he saw the documents, witnesses said he froze. He did not shout, he did not collapse. He simply stood there, stunned, as if the ground beneath him had shifted without warning. Katie's team moved fast. Her lawyers filed for sole custody of Suri. They requested immediate protection orders. They pushed for speed, precision, and total privacy. And it worked. In just 11 days, the marriage was over. No trial, no public battle, no chance for negotiation. Hollywood had never seen anything like it. A global superstar blindsided by a woman determined to protect her child at all costs. After the divorce, Katie disappeared from Tom's world completely. Suri stayed with her, and rumors spread that Tom rarely, if ever, saw his daughter again. The truth behind closed doors was never fully revealed. But one thing was clear. For the second time in his life, Tom Cruise had lost the family he tried to build. He continued working. He continued smiling. But inside, a part of him became quieter, heavier, more distant than ever before. And yet, just when everyone thought he was fading, just when the world assumed his career would crumble under the weight of scandal, Tom Cruise did something no one expected. He rose again, higher than ever, fiercer than ever, and with a determination that would rewrite the boundaries of modern cinema. After the heartbreak, after the public collapse, after losing the woman he loved and the daughter he cherished, most people would have faded. Most men would have broken. But Tom Cruise is not most men. In the silence that followed the divorce, Hollywood expected him to disappear. They expected him to retreat, to slow down, to hide behind the shadows of his own scandals. Instead, Tom chose the opposite. He did not run from the spotlight. He ran toward it. He ran into the fire. If the world questioned his sanity, he would show them devotion. If people mocked his behavior, he would show them discipline. If audiences doubted him, he would make them believe again, not with apologies, not with interviews, but with action, real action. This was the birth of a new Tom Cruise, a man who no longer wanted to act like a hero. He wanted to be one. He began pushing his body past limits most younger actors would never dare attempt. He trained like a soldier, a pilot, a stuntman, a machine built for danger. He hung off cliffs without ropes. He clung to the side of a flying airplane. He jumped from buildings. He broke bones and finished the scene anyway. Every risk, every wound, every impossible stunt was his way of saying, "I am still here. I am not done. I will earn your respect again, even if it breaks me." The world watched breathless. Directors were terrified. Studios begged him to use stunt doubles. Insurance companies panicked. But Tom Cruise only smiled. He knew exactly what he was doing. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the public began to shift. The jokes stopped. The mockery faded. The headlines changed tone. Audiences no longer saw a celebrity unraveling. They saw a man fighting. A man who refused to surrender. A man who risked his life because storytelling mattered that much to him. Then came the films. Mission Impossible. Edge of Tomorrow, American-made, each one louder, faster, more daring than anything he had done before. And then, the miracle happened. The world began to call him something new. The last great movie star. The man they once mocked had become the very symbol of cinematic survival. But even as his career soared higher than ever, even as billions of dollars poured into the box office, there was still a part of Tom Cruise that could not be rescued by fame. A part that success could not heal. A part that remained painfully human. Because for all the helicopters he dangled from, for all the skyscrapers he leapt across, for all the lives he saved on screen, there were lives he could not reach off-screen, especially the ones that shared his last name. For all the skyscrapers he climbed, for all the planes he clung to, for all the stunts that nearly cost him his life, there was one thing Tom Cruise could not outrun: distance. Silence. The quiet echo of a child whispering the word father. Because behind the legend, behind the billion-dollar franchises, behind every impossible mission, there were 3 children who grew up in 3 completely different worlds. And Tom Cruise was not fully present in any of them. Isabella and Connor, the 2 children he adopted with Nicole Kidman, remained close to him after the divorce. They were raised inside Scientology. They lived in a world shaped by its rules, its language, its beliefs. Tom supported them. Tom loved them. But critics whispered that the church loved them too, perhaps even more. Nicole later said she respected her children's choices, but the distance between her and them became a quiet ache she never fully spoke about. A wound created not by anger, but by ideology. And then, there was Suri, the daughter whose birth he celebrated with pride, the child he once held with trembling hands, the little girl who made him smile in a way the world rarely saw. After the divorce, Suri stayed with Katie Holmes, and slowly, almost painfully, she vanished from Tom's public life. No photographs together, no vacations, no candid moments caught by paparazzi. Just absence. A hollow shape where a father should be. Some said it was the divorce agreement. Some said it was protection. Others believed it was the pull of Scientology creating an invisible line that neither side could cross. No one knew the truth. No one still knows, but the silence between father and daughter became one of the most heartbreaking mysteries of modern Hollywood. Tom continued working. He continued smiling. He filled screens with fire, adrenaline, and speed. But every birthday he missed, every school event he was not at every year, Suri grew older without him, chipped away at the image of the invincible man. Because behind the hero, behind the fighter, behind the unstoppable force, was a father losing time. And time is the one enemy Tom Cruise can never defeat. No matter how high he climbs, no matter how fast he runs, no matter how brave he tries to be. But destiny still had one more twist waiting for him. A chance to rewrite everything. A chance to remind the world why he ever became a legend. A chance to show that even a man surrounded by controversy could still save something bigger than himself. Not a marriage. Not a public image, but an entire industry on the verge of collapse. There are comebacks, and then there are resurrections. By the time Tom Cruise stepped into his 60s, Hollywood had changed. Audiences were leaving theaters. Studios were terrified of the future. Superheroes were fading. Franchises were collapsing. It felt like the magic of the movies was slipping away. And then out of nowhere came the man no one expected. A man who had lost his marriages. A man who had faced public humiliation. A man who had been on the edge of becoming a relic. Tom Cruise walked back into the spotlight, not as a scandal, not as a meme, not as a controversial figure, but as the savior of the movie theater. Top Gun: Maverick was not just a sequel. It was a symbol. A promise that cinema still mattered. A reminder that the feeling of sitting in a dark theater, heart-pounding, eyes-wide, breath-held, could still unite millions of strangers. While studios chased green screens, Tom chased authenticity. He trained for months to fly real fighter jets. He pushed his crew, his body, and the technology itself to the edge. Every scream in that cockpit was real. Every G-force was real. Every heartbeat echoing through the sound design was real. And the world responded. The film exploded. Audiences returned to theaters in numbers no one believed possible. Critics hailed him as the last true movie star. Directors credited him with saving the industry after the pandemic. Strangers who had never cared for action films suddenly found themselves in crowded theaters again, laughing, cheering, crying. Tom Cruise had done it. Not with drama, not with scandal, not with a redemption tour or tearful apology. He saved Hollywood the same way he saved his career, with discipline, with obsession, with the unwavering belief that movies still matter. But the strange thing about victory is how lonely it can feel. Because while Tom stood on the mountaintop, older, wiser, stronger than ever, his personal life remained quiet. No partner by his side, no daughter in his arms, no family cheering from the audience. Just a single man standing beneath the roar of applause, thinking about everything he had gained and everything he had lost. Today, Tom Cruise lives inside a paradox. He is the most fearless man on screen and one of the most guarded off-screen. He is adored by millions, yet walks alone. He has accomplished what no other actor of his generation has yet, carries wounds no camera can capture. And as he moves toward the next impossible mission, there is one truth that becomes impossible to ignore. Tom Cruise did not become a legend because he was perfect. He became a legend because he refused to stop moving, refused to stop fighting, refused to let pain, loss, or scandal define him. In the end, his story is not about fame or success. It is about endurance. About a boy who outran fear, a man who rebuilt himself from the ashes twice, and an icon who carried an entire industry when it could no longer carry itself. Tom Cruise stands today not as the last action hero, but as the last believer in courage, the last believer in storytelling, the last believer in the power of the theater's glow in a dark room. And maybe that is why, even after all the noise, all the heartbreak, all the controversy, the world still cannot look away.